Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry I'm not there in person. I would much rather give a presentation in person, but sadly, my field season from last year is still causing me some pain, just dealing with some sciatica, but I'm getting better. I'm on the mend. So my apologies, I'm not there in person, but here we go. I've got a little presentation about the flora and lichens of Blue Mountain Birch Cove. And yeah, I am a lichenology technician with the Atlantic Canada Conservation Data Center. So this was part of our work last year. So a little overview here of what you're in for this evening. And just a side personal note, this was a special project to me because I am born and raised in Halifax, and I spent a lot of my childhood swimming, canoeing, playing, hiking around the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area. So it was really fun to go back for work and get to explore the flora and fauna and lichens there. So what was ACCDC doing in Blue Mountain Birch Cove? Well, we were contracted by the provincial government, the Environment, Climate Change, their Protected Areas and Ecosystems Division. We were contracted by them to do a biological inventory of the Blue Mountain Birch Cove lands. So the study that we did last year will be used to inform the process of for potential designation of that area as a national urban park by Parks Canada. So that process is ongoing so far as I know. So where is this, for those who don't know, a little synopsis of the lands that we're talking about. We're talking about the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes Wilderness area. So that's about 4,403 acres. The Nova Scotia Nature Trust owns a few parcels of land in there. The Cox Lake Conservation Lands, 109 acres. The Blue Mountain Wilderness Connector, which is 560 acres. And the small but mighty Timberlea Conservation Lands at 9 acres. And there's also a few pockets in there of land owned by Halifax Regional Municipality. So I love maps. Here's not the greatest map, but a map of the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes area. So all the yellow that you're seeing on the map, that's the wilderness area. The pockets of sort of periwinkle color are the Nature Trust lands. And the darker green area is land that was acquired by HRM to be added into the potential urban park. And the light green is Crown land. So, methods, survey effort. We were out in Blue Mountain Birch Cove conducting field surveys between June 13th and September 15th of last year, 2023. And the focus was mainly, it was birds and it was vascular plants and lichens. So we timed our surveys for the breeding bird time, that was sort of early June, and bloom times, so which happen throughout the season. We were there for 12 days in total, and we had 6 staff working on this. So approximately that worked out to about 40 person days in there. And together we covered 208.3 kilometers. And that was by foot and canoe, both. And our goal was to cover as much of the area as possible and get to as many different habitats as possible. And we planned our routes using aerial imagery, plus a combination of mapping layers. So for lichens in particular, species at risk lichens, we want to focus on areas that have that are wet forested areas. So WAM, that acronym that you see there, stands for wet areas mapping. So we would layer that with canopy height, which would typically be older forests, and we would focus our search efforts into those areas. And of course, we also had to plan routes according to where we could actually get into the area. And Blue Mountain Birch Cove is not the easiest place to access. So yeah, one canoe day involved parking on the side of a highway and scrambling down a pretty steep embankment with a 17-foot canoe. So that was interesting, but we did it. And we also wanted to put a special focus on lake shores, open wetlands, forested wetlands, and rock barrens. And that was, again, to capture as many different ecosystems and get as much biological diversity as we could. So here's a messy little map of all of our tracks. So each different color represents a different staff member. So you get a sense of how much area we covered. And we did pretty well, I'd say. Got a lot of ground covered there. So our species diversity, just looking at some solid numbers here, we had 341 vascular plant species in total. And of that 341, 283 of those were native species and 58 were exotic. Most of the exotic species were, as you'd expect, close to the developed areas, edges of roads, edges of trails, parking lots, that sort of thing. And we had 104 lichen species documented. And I would venture to guess that there's a lot more than just the 104 that we listed there. I have a few specimens that I still haven't processed or figured out just yet. And I'm sure there's many more crustose species that could be found. So, but that gives us a good overview of the species diversity for plants and lichens. I wanted to highlight a few noteworthy ecosystems within Blue Mountain Birch Cove. There's definitely mature and old forests in the area, lots of open rock barrens, and forested wetlands. So our mature and old forests, most of those were made up of hemlock red spruce. Some were white pine red spruce. And we're estimating maturity here. We didn't do the provincial old growth scoring. We didn't have increment borers with us. We didn't have DBH tapes, but we did have experience in our staff members for having seen mature and old forests across this province. So we used that kind of eyeballing the diameter of trees, and we used canopy height mapping as well to give us a sense of maturity. Another good indicator for old growth, and one that the province has added to its old growth scoring, is the presence of coral lichen, Spherophorus globosus, and that's in the bottom picture there. It's a really beautiful, elegant looking lichen, I think, and it kind of sticks off of trees. So in that photo, it's on a yellow birch. And generally, when you see coral lichen, you're probably in an older forest. So that's me standing next to a hemlock there, close to Cox Lake. And the other photo is a very large white pine. So here's the canopy height map, just to give you a better sense of some of the locations of those mature and old forests. So the darker red, orangey red areas are the tallest canopy, and elevation was taken into account in creating this map, so it's not skewing the results at all. So you can see Cox Lake, particularly the southern portion of it, has some of the highest canopy trees. And I walked and canoed along that area, and there are, I can confirm, very old, large diameter trees and lots of coral lichen in there. So another ecosystem worthy of note in the area was rock barrens. Rock barrens are more common in the southern portion of the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area and southeast portion of it. And they support some uncommon plant communities. So broom crowberry, Cormia conradii. That's, well, it's common throughout Nova Scotia. It's uncommon anywhere else in the globe. So we're calling it an uncommon plant community for that reason. And also in these rock barrens, you see a lot of Greenland stitchwort, which I just love. I think it's amazing that it looks like it's just growing right out of a boulder a lot of the time. And these rock barrens also host a number of the rare lichen species that we found, including spiny heath lichen and finger ring lichen, which I will circle back to those later. And forested wetlands. So forested wetlands, we know all over the province host are rich ecosystems for plants, lichens, and birds. And just a side note for you bird nerds in the audience, we did find a number of species at risk birds, including Canada warbler, eastern wood pewee, lots of nighthawk, common nighthawk as well. And the Canada warblers were always found in forested wetland areas. So these forested wetlands are also great habitat for species of conservation concern lichens, as well as at-risk lichen species like blue felt. And they're also great habitat for southern twayblade orchid. And when I'm talking about forested wetlands in this area in Blue Mountain Birch Cove, these were typically sphagnum dominant forested wetlands. Okay, so let's define what we're talking about when I say species of conservation concern. So that is federally and or provincially listed species. And it's also species that conservation data centers would rank S1 to S3, S4. So anything in that range. So with that definition, we found 4 vascular plant species of conservation concern and 12 lichen species. So 2 of those lichen species are federally listed and 1 has both federal and provincial listing. So let's get into those. Our vascular plant species of conservation concern, here's all 4 of them. Southern twayblade. Such a beautiful, tiny, delicate orchid, also a part of the Atlantic coastal plain flora. And you'll find that we were finding that in forested wetlands. They were more open canopy forested wetlands, definitely sphagnum dominant, as you can see in that photo, or maybe you can't see in the photo, but just trust me, it's growing in sphagnum moss there. And this was more common in the northwestern half of the protected area. We did find quite a bit of it concentrated in a number of wetlands. Canada cinquefoil. This was found just once, actually on one of the Nature Trust newly protected easements. And it was in an open, disturbed area right below a power line. There's probably more in the area, but we didn't come across it ourselves. There was lots of Greenland stitchwort in the area, and that was more common in the southeastern half, so in those rock barrens, in the open rock barrens. And then American beech. Yes, a species of conservation concern. We may not consider it that, but it's definitely under threat from a few different invasives. Oh my gosh, the leaf mining weevil, as well as the canker. So it's double double threat to the American beach there. So that's why it's listed as a species of conservation concern. We only found it in 2 locations. We only made note of it in 2 locations. There's likely more in the area, and it's typically in a mixed forest habitat. There isn't a lot of pure deciduous. In fact, I would say there is no pure deciduous forest in the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area, mostly mixed. So that's where we were finding it. And I can see a couple of questions coming up in the chat. Well, I can't see them in the chat yet, but I will definitely take questions at the end. So this is another map for all you map lovers of our species of conservation concern plants. So all of the red dots with the N in it, that's our southern twayblade locations. And the white teardrops there, that's all of our Greenland stitchwort. So you can see it's very much in the south, all in the barrens areas. And our 2 blue dots, that's the American beech. And up there in the northern corner on the power line cut, that is the Canada cinquefoil. All right, lichens. Lichen species at risk. So these 3 species are all listed species. Frosted glass whiskers we found in 2 different locations in the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area. It's a pretty cryptic little lichen. It's a stubble lichen, calicioid, and you find it it only grows on the heartwood of the exposed heartwood of hardwood trees, deciduous trees, typically maples, sometimes yellow birch as well. The 2 host trees that we found in Blue Mountain Birch Cove, these were both red maples. So I've got it circled in red in the center there, and it's called stubble lichen for a reason. It really does look like stubbles of hair with sort of white snow on top of it. And up in the left-hand corner there with the 2 red arrows, that's pointing at 2 stubbles there that you can see. So Sclerophora perenella, frosted glass whiskers, this is listed as special concern federally. It's not listed provincially as a species at risk. However, it is protected by special management practices for forestry on Crown land. So some protection provincially. And it's also typically going to be found in a forested wetland. So that photo down in the left-hand corner, that's the habitat where this lichen would be found. Blue felt lichen, we found one thalli and 1 tree up in the northern portion of the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area. This lichen is our provincial lichen, and it's listed both federally and provincially as special concern. And it's also protected by the special management practices for forestry on Crown land. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner here, we have white-rimmed shingle lichen, Viscopaneria leucosticta. This is listed federally as threatened. This was a record that came from iNaturalist, so we didn't, ACCDC staff didn't actually relocate this out in the field, but it was documented on iNaturalist, so we included it in the report as well. And I thought I'd include it on this slide as just another lichen species at risk that was found in the area. And here's a map of where those species were found. So frosted glass whiskers, both of those were in forested wetlands. Blue felt lichen was also in a semi-wet area. I don't think I would have called it a forested wetland, but it was very close to one of those lakes, as you can see. And the white rim shingle lichen is down closer to the Kearney Lake side of things. Yeah, I'm definitely going to make a point of going to visit that one personally. Anyways, there's where our species at risk lichens are. So a little more on species of conservation concern lichens. I just pulled these 3 out of the 12 that we had, partly because they were ones that I found they were a bit unique. So spiny heath lichen, this, we only found 1 record of it in Blue Mountain Birch Cove. It's a rock barren specialist, so it's growing out in the open. There's usually lots of other cladonia species growing around it, crowberry growing close by. This record that we found may represent, oh, look at that typo, bad Fiona, not represent. Okay, may represent a southward range extension for this species. The only other records that we have for spiny heath lichen, the nearest one is in Guysborough County and the others are in Cape Breton. So this is the southernmost record that the CDC has in our database. So that's kind of cool. The powder-tipped antler lichen, Hypotrichina, that is an S2 species. It's found in both forest and rock barrens. It's always growing on trees. So I put rock barrens because that is where the habitat where I found it. I found it in the portion of Blue Mountain Birch Cove that's closest to Susie's Lake. And it was on a black spruce, on a branch of a black spruce. And that record is the northernmost record that we have in the CDC database. So also kind of neat. So we do have multiple records of that in the southwestern portion of Nova Scotia, but this would be the northernmost record that we have. So that was also a neat find for me. And it's a pretty, I mean, I'm going to say it's a charismatic lichen. It's branches out. It does look like antlers, as you can kind of see in the photo, and those crusty fuzzy bits at the end, that powder is Ceridia. And then you can see these kind of black rhizines projecting from underneath on the underside of the lichen there. Okay, and the last one of conservation concern that I'll highlight is black-footed reindeer lichen. This is Cladonia stygia. This you find in open peat bogs, and you can find it across the province in open peat bogs. And there's possibly, this has an S3 question mark because it's possibly underrepresented. It hasn't been found as much as there actually is of it out there. There's probably more of it out there, we think. There just hasn't been as much search effort for it. It looks a lot like and can be easily mistaken for other Cladonia species. But what makes it distinctive, and you really got to pull out a chunk of it to make sure, is that it has pure black. The ends of it that go into the peat are pure black. And even when you crack open it's a hollow lichen, and when you crack it open, the inside is also pure black. So this was actually, I found this on just an off chance. I was out mentoring with Sean Blaney. I was supposed to be focusing on vascular plants, and I just saw this while we were in an open bog, and I thought, that looks like it could be. And I grabbed a handful and hastily took a GPS waypoint and stuffed it in my backpack, and stuffed the sample in my backpack. And lo and behold, later on, when I took a closer look, it was Stygia. So that was a great find. And here's a somewhat cluttered map of all of the other species of conservation concern lichens in the Blue Mountain Birch Cove area. The star there is where the Stygia, the Cladonia stygia, was found. You can see the Hypotrichina down there, the powder-tipped antler lichen down by Susie's Lake, close to the Bears Lake Industrial Park in the southern end of that the protected area. Okay, and I'll open it up to questions now. Thanks so much for listening. And my contact information is there, my email, fiona.brooks@accdc.ca. If you're feeling too shy to ask questions directly, you can feel free to send me an email.
So tell me about that finger ring lichen. What does that look like?
Oh, yeah, Arctopermelia incurva. So I did have a picture of it, and it's not actually the greatest picture of it, but it's a crustose species, so it's flat onto the rock, and it's concentric rings. It sort of looks like circles. It makes somewhat of arcing circles on the rock.
Like a bullseye?
Yeah, kind of like a bullseye. Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike a bullseye, it's all the same color. And unlike a bullseye, it also has these perfectly round mounds of Cerridea on it, which also give it a pretty charismatic look. But yeah, it's a neat one. I mean, it's called it's an S3, S4, so it's not too uncommon. If you're on a rock barren in Nova Scotia, you'll probably find it. If you got your eye out. Yeah, great one.
Turn on the
light. Why did you choose, and I think you probably covered this at the beginning, but why did you choose those particular species to look at?
Of lichen or of the vast?
Yes, so you had lichens, beech trees. Yeah.
Yes. So the 4 species of vascular plants that I focused on were 4 that are species of conservation concern. So they're a bit more rare in the province. So that's why I featured those 4 in particular, because they were the only 4 species of conservation concern that we found in Blue Mountain Birch Cove. So we didn't find any species at risk vascular plants. So I thought I would focus on the 4 of conservation concern. Yeah, and then the lichen species, again, I narrowed in on the ones that were of either listed species, federally or provincially listed species, or they were more rare or like a unique occurrence that showed some sort of possible range extension. And I also focused on the rare lichen species that I had personally recorded, as opposed to my my former colleague, James Churchill, who is also an incredible lichenologist and a mentor of mine. He found a number of listed or species of conservation concern in the area, but I didn't cover those because I didn't find them personally.
Yes, I have some beech trees on my property, and a lot of them have the canker and Lord knows what. But I think I have some that are looking healthier. I'm kind of wondering, are some beeches surviving that are resistant to some of these things?
Yeah, they say that they're, I forget the exact percentage, but somewhere between 2 and 5% of beech trees are genetically resistant to the beech scale, to the canker. Now, whether those same trees are also going to be resistant to the beech leaf mining weevil is another question. So that's our latest threat. So if you start seeing the leaves of your beech tree turning, if you're seeing spots and holes in them, that might be an indication that they're getting hit by the leaf mining weevil as well.
So the ones that you were looking at suffered from both, did they?
The ones that we were looking at, I only saw clear signs of, well, one of them I didn't see at all. I didn't record it. That was Sean. But the one that I did see, it definitely had canker. Yeah.
This is what I'm finding. I didn't see any evidence of the other one. Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
We have a question in the chat from David Patrick asking if the forested glass whiskers that's found anywhere else besides exposed heartwood, always in wetlands or not.
Oh yeah, so frosted glass whiskers, it is always on the exposed heartwood, and it's even more specialized, so it can't just be exposed to the elements. It's got to be covered just slightly, so it's not getting direct rainfall on it. It'll be recessed in a little further, or the tree will be on a little bit of a lean, or there'll be some sort of way that it's getting a little bit of coverage on that heartwood, so it's not getting direct sunlight, direct exposure to the rain. It's quite a specialized little lichen, and it is typically found in either a forested wetland or very close to a water body of some sort, a river, a lake. So I was looking a lot along the shorelines of Cox Lake, looking at all the hardwoods I could find to see if I could find it there. Did not find it there. James gets credit for finding both of the glass whiskers records in Blue Mountain Birch Cove. Thanks for the question.
I was wondering if you had any hints as to identifying the Canada cinquefoil, which is, I know it's a lot like the regular one, basically the exotic one.
Yeah, good question. It's one that I learned that one from Sean last summer while I was out with him, and he was saying that it's got a more the tips of the leaves are more rounded than our common cinquefoil, so it doesn't come to a point. It's a bit more rounded at the tips.
Okay.
And that's your best bet, or at least the one that's sticking out of my memory right now.
Thanks.
So you're hoping that this will encourage acquisition and preservation of more land in this area?
Yeah, that would be great to see more land protected around the area. There's still a few pocket inholdings and areas around it that could be added. And the report that we put together for the provincial government, for the Department of Environment, that has been put forward to the collective of different landowners in the area and interested parties who were all working together to potentially get the area protected by Parks Canada as, I believe, Canada's first national urban park. So that would be great to see it all protected as one cohesive unit. And our work will also inform, if that does happen, it would inform where infrastructure would be going. You know, they would be avoiding where the frosted glass whiskers were, for example, and avoiding putting trails through where the stitchwort is, and that kind of thing. So yeah, it'll help. It will hopefully help with the continued protection of the area and how it's stewarded going forward.
It borders onto some inhabited areas. Do you have any escapes?
You mean like exotic species?
Well, from people's gardens or whatever. I find on my own property, I have a lot of volunteers. I don't know where they've come from, but they are invasives.
Yeah, almost all of the exotic species that we found were very close to developed areas in sort of close to parking lots or edges of trails. Yeah, they were all pretty close to that. I did find one record of glossy buckthorn that was near the shore of Susie's Lake, so a little bit further removed from developed area, but you know, it's all surrounded by urban and suburban development. So I mean, as you say, I'm sure there's many willing volunteers who would like to get rooted in there. Which hopefully that could be part of, again, the stewardship of the area would be to track those invasives and make sure that they're not taking hold and out-competing the native species. That would be the hope.
Charlie has a question. So Charlie was asking if you encountered any evidence of mainland moose.
I didn't personally, no. Lots of evidence of white-tailed deer. I found a coyote skull at one on the Barrens somewhere. And porcupine, raccoons, but no mainland moose evidence in the area. Doesn't mean they aren't there, but we didn't encounter any. I would be surprised, but I remain optimistic.
Fair enough. Okay, I think maybe we're done for this evening.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you, Fiona. I mean, you clearly have a passion for this, so I really appreciate that. It was a great presentation. Really makes me want to get out there, to be honest, and find those frosted glass whiskers, you know.
Me too. I can't wait to get back out.
Yeah. So well done.
Thank you so.
And also our appreciation to the ACCDC, all the work they do, and they're also really helpful. Like, you know, if we have a real puzzling question and stuff, you guys always pull through. So it's great that we have this connection with the organization. And seems to be an annual thing at our annual general meetings these days that you guys present, and it's always a wonderful presentation. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Look forward to meeting all of you in person, and
Okay.
take care. Good night.